locked down. Alright, let's get started. In at 10, Oliver Queen and Isabelle ROCHEV. Arrow Season 2 is one of the best seasons of any Arrowverse show. The whole story with Deathstroke and the ramifications of what he did were so intense and it kept me on edge the whole time. One moment, however, is something that I could have done without. Isabelle ROCHEV had started showing up, and after Oliver and company needed to go to Russia to help find Lila Michaels, Isabelle wanted to come to ensure that they were actually doing business, not using this trip so that Oliver could get better acquainted with Felicity. However, the opposite ends up happening and Oliver sleeps with Isabelle. And then Felicity walks in after, saying what happens in Russia stays in Russia. But I can't forget it. The fact that this hookup gives Oliver enough trust in Isabelle to give her the company for long enough to get him booted out causes the Queen family to crumble. They lose their fortune, Thea gets kidnapped by Slade, Slade gets the tech he needs to make a huge army of Mirakuru monsters, and Moira Queen bites the dust. This one hookup caused a lot more bad than good, so I wish it could have been forgotten. But I guess it technically was.
In at number 9, Buffy. Vampires are considered pretty damn demonic in the Buffyverse, and Buffy, the Vampire Slayer, has hooked up with not just one, but 2 vampires, having complicated romantic relationships with Angelus, aka Angel, and Spike over the course of 7 seasons of the TV series, which now continues the story in its comic books. Buffy began a relationship with Angel in the first season of the show, which would implode in the second season when his soul was removed and he reverted back to his homicidal sadistic ways. Being the big bad of that season, the 2 of them split up and Angel ran off to LA to start his very own television spin-off. While the 2 were still kind of always each other's OTP, or as far as Sarah Michelle Gellar is concerned, and also myself. Spike, who was initially supposed to be a one-off villain, ended up sticking around for later seasons of Buffy, and the 2 began a romance. Spike was tormented by the fact that he had fallen in unrequited love with the Slayer, and after Buffy died and was brought back to life and suffered through a very traumatic season 6, the 2 would eventually kiss. But it was a pretty toxic relationship. In the end, he sacrificed himself for the greater good, finding himself on Angel's TV show after Buffy's series ended. Plus, her pal Xander was also in a long-term relationship with a demon named Anya, so the whole series just has a whole lot of intermingling when it comes to the supernatural and who gets you off. Moving on to number 8, She-Hulk. So this number is kind of cheating because it involves Juggernaut and he's not technically a mutant despite being Charles Xavier's stepbrother and also a member of the Brotherhood of Evil Mutants. But this hookup is kind of the hookup of all hookups when it comes to comic books, so we decided to include it on our list and give Kane Marco an honorary mutant status for it. Talking She-Hulk and Juggernaut, guys! For starters, Jennifer Walters gets way too much slack for being promiscuous. Iron Man Tony Stark is also a major hoe and doesn't get nearly as much heat, which is something that was actually brought up in the comics when those 2 hooked up. Anyway, we're not here to talk about She-Hulk's other hookups, but rather her hookup with a particular, not actually a mutant, that made shockwaves, possibly literally 2, after it happened. Look at that bedroom damage! God! I don't know about you guys, but I'm like, those repairs do not look cheap. Anyway, that is a hookup, or at least a superhero hookup. This went down in Juggernaut issue 2. Now all these days this hookup has been kind of retconned. It was an alternate reality version of She-Hulk. It's still one that has managed to remain in our collective memories, which is why it gets a spot on this list too.
And at 7, Hank Pym and Janet Van Dyne. There is an unspoken rule in comics, where while yes, superpowers would come in play during bedroom time, nobody speaks of it. Even if things like super speed, elasticity, or even shrinking/growing could be of use. Even if things like super speed, elasticity, or even shrinking/growing could be of use. However, Jeff Johns broke that rule in 2003 with his memorable scene featuring the supersizer Hank Pym showing some of his abilities to his ex-wife Janet Van Dyne during Jeff's short-lived Avengers run. The rule breaking combined with the question of what exactly he was doing and the sight of him climbing through Janet's breast like he's a hobbit going on an adventure is just too much for my eyes to bear. And like, she was really getting into it. I know I'm gonna regret asking this, but like, I really wonder what he was doing. What in all living hell are you doing? Obviously it's not normal. And at 6, Supergirl and Comet the Wonder Horse. Look, sure superheroes can have pets, that's fine with me. Crypto, Batcow, I love them all. But when you engage in a relationship with this pet, that's when it gets a little too much. Technically she didn't hook up with him, but she almost did, and technically it was while he was human, but it's still too much. This horse literally had a thought bubble saying, if only I was human I could tell her how I feel. Why do you feel romantic feelings towards someone of an entirely different biological genome? Comet was originally a centaur, and after saving the witch Circe, she gave him a potion to make him a full human, but accidentally made him fully horse. So instead she gave him superpowers because she couldn't reverse the spell. Well, after developing romantic feelings towards Kara, Kara went and got herself a human boyfriend because anything other than that is illegal. But Comet became jealous and got another spell put on him to transform him into Bill Star, a human. The two began dating and were about to take the plunge before the spell wore off and he was back to being a horse. The thing is, this isn't where Comet stopped. He also had a brief relationship with Lois Lane in her comic book. Jesus Christ, man. Guess Kara's only riding your back this time, Comet. And at 5, Hal Jordan and Orisa Rabb. Hal Jordan is typically a pretty stand-up guy. When he isn't rebuilding his destroyed city, he is pretty much doing the right thing, and at least he has some form of morals, hence why he initially pushed Orisa Rabb, a 13-year-old alien he recruited into the Corps, who was desperately in love with him, away and towards the Corps. The whole hero-worshipping thing I can understand, plus Hal is a good-looking guy, but he literally is more than twice your age, girl. However, using the abilities of her Green Lantern ring, she changed her body into more of an appropriate age. Her body was the right size and shape, but her mind was still that of a 14-year-old. However, this didn't stop old GL from giving into his base instincts and giving into her new mature look. It's not okay, and while sure he may not have known or may have just thought that she was older, it's still an issue. And it's not just his fault. I mean, why did she think this was a good idea? But I mean, she isn't really complaining. But it still isn't cool and it shouldn't have happened. Let me forget. And at 4, Superman and Supergirl. Krypton is a different planet, therefore they have their own laws and views on things. And Krypton has laws against the marriage of cousins, unlike some places on Earth. This, however, is literally the only thing keeping Superman from marrying Supergirl. He says it himself. And I brought it up on one of my first lists on this channel, when I was lame and boring. Linda Danvers was a troubled person, especially after her boyfriend cut her and used her blood to summon a demon. Matrix intervened and tried to cover up Linda's wounds and keep her alive, but instead fused with her. Since Matrix was essentially a proto-Supergirl, these things together made a new Supergirl after the old one had been written out of continuity. However, Superman fell in love with this version even after she used Kara's backstory posing as her. But he only revealed his feelings when he figured out that she wasn't really Kara. Still creepy.
In at number 3, Johnny Storm and Medusa. This hookup certainly shocked fans of the Uncanny Inhumans, especially considering that Johnny was already in an established relationship with Crystal, the element-controlling Inhuman royal family member. However, in 2016, during issue number 8 of the Inhuman series, Johnny had flipped the script and hooked up with Crystal's sister Medusa. This is like a comic book soap opera. At the time, she wasn't with Black Bolt anymore, and as fate would have it, the pair instantly clicked. Of course, it didn't last long when Crystal found out. Then when Black Bolt returned, things got even more awkward with Johnny deciding to just leave the Inhumans to avoid any friction altogether. Probably a good move.
And at 2, the Parkers. I know this isn't really a superhero hooking up, but this hookup did result in a superhero. While we all know Peter Parker's backstory, what if we were wrong about it? The troubled storyline features an alternate to the story, so instead of Peter's father being loyal to his mother, he cheated on her. With her sister, meaning Aunt May if you didn't already know. Yeah, in the troubled storyline, Peter's father slept with Aunt May and got her pregnant. With the kid that would someday become Spider-Man. Aunt May was really Peter's mother. And looking at Marissa Tomei, I understand. What the hell? Like, why would anyone think that this should be a thing? This was a 5-issue miniseries that was an attempt to get females into comics. Having Aunt May be promiscuous and sleeping with her sister's boyfriend isn't really the way to get girls into comics. Sorry to tell you. They would already like Spider-Man because he's a teen and attractive, especially that Tobey Maguire fella. Oh boy. Oh, with that emo hair. Oh, and that dancing. Yeah. Oh, y'all think I'm boring now? Finally, in at number 1, Ultimate Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. This has to be one of the worst things I've ever seen in comics, in the Ultimate series of comics. It's not like they changed the whole brother or sister thing either, and everyone seemed okay with it. The only one that wasn't concerned was Cap, and when someone explained to him that they just love each other, he said, of course they do. They're brother and sister. Why was this a thing? I can't help but be mad at this. Who, what, when, where, why, Alex. Thank you, Cap, for being the sensible one.
Starting us off in at number 10, Wasp. Let's begin our list with one of the stranger hookups that we'll be discussing today. Wasp and Magneto. Yup, that's a thing that happened. This went down in Secret Wars issue 3, the first Secret Wars, and it was only a one-night stand, but it is kinda creepy. Magneto makes a move on her and Janet is all like, wait, what? And then says no, 3 times before he whips this trick out on her. I quote, "There was so little time, Janet," while practically rubbing his face up against hers. And then she eventually gives in by saying, "Oh, why not?" and then compliments his eyes. The whole thing is a little melodramatic, and needless to say, we're pretty okay with the fact that it didn't exceed that one night stand. In at number 9, Crystal. Inhuman Princess Crystal and mutant speedster Quicksilver fell in love after she nurtured him back to health post-Sentinel attack. Now, this is when Quicksilver was still technically a mutant. He's a human mutate now after a retcon, but it counts. So the two got married and had a kid named Luna. Their wedding happened in Avengers issue 127 but was interrupted by Ultron, and then the two eventually officially tied the knot in Fantastic Four issue 150. The relationship went downhill from there though. Crystal cheated on him, and Quicksilver, who has a real bad temper, got abusive with her. He even shouted at her, I quote, "You and humans are nothing but a cult. You never had any room in your isolated world for a mutant," all while painfully gripping her wrist while she exclaims to him that he's hurting her. Dude, chill. The hell, man.
And at 8, Cheshire and Roy Harper. During Roy's attempt to go straight, he was sent to be an undercover agent to infiltrate a terrorist organization and dismantle them from the inside. And while he was planning on doing this, he definitely got inside. During his time there, he met up with a criminal known as Cheshire. They fell in love and ended up having a kid named Leanne. If the whole Roy working undercover a little too much thing wasn't enough, this kid ended up causing one of the worst story arcs in Green Arrow history, where in Cry of Justice, Prometheus sets bombs in his captors' home cities, one of those captors being Oliver. When Oliver returns to Star City and sees the destruction, he gets mad, but when he finds Leanne, Roy's daughter because of this hookup, crushed by a building, this coupled with more destruction and Prometheus having taken Roy's arm, causes Oliver to decide he needs true justice. So he hunts down Prometheus and puts an arrow right between the eyes. This leads into the trial of Oliver Queen, another one of the series' worst stories. I really wish this hadn't happened. I love Green Arrow.
Moving on to number 7, Spider-Man. While Peter Parker's most iconic romantic pairings are Mary Jane Watson and Gwen Stacy, the character has dated outside of the human race too. Once upon a time, Parker dated Marrow, aka Sarah Rushman, a mutant capable of growing skeletal structures outside of her body. Essentially, bones would painfully erect themselves outside of her skin, which she could use as a weapon, body armor, shield, you name it. Marrow had an awkward story arc where she was brainwashed by S.H.I.E.L.D. and believed that she was a student at Empire State University. There, she developed a crush on Parker, who was working there as a lecturer. Eventually, she discovered that he was Spider-Man, and the relationship fell apart after a few dates, with Marrow eventually being rid of S.H.I.E.L.D.'s influence. Well, that was not really a good time for Marrow in general. Up next at 6, Black Panther. Black Panther and Mutant Storm have had one of the most iconic and endearing relationships in Marvel's panels. T'Challa and Aurora have had a long-winded history together. They've been into each other since they were kids, and carried affection around in their hearts for one another for years and years. Then back in 2006, they actually tied the knot in a wedding that interrupted and paused the Civil War. Eventually, despite their chemistry together, T'Challa annulled their marriage because he felt that Storm had betrayed him by siding with the X-Men during AVX, so. In at number 5, Namor. Namor has hooked up with a mutant before, and that mutant's name is Emma Frost. I mean, I kinda get it, he's attractive in that whole arrogant King of Atlantis way, right? Maybe? Despite him looking like an aging genie going through a midlife crisis the first time that we're led to assume that they met, the two had a previous history together, when Namor had been invited to the Hellfire Club by Sebastian Shaw. Namor was not interested in the Hellfire Club though. He sure as hell was interested in Emma. She seduced him, and after the fact, Shaw had their hookup wiped from Emma's memory. The sexual chemistry between the two has been palpable ever since. Speaking of Emma Frost though, that brings us to our next number.
In at number 4, Batman and Black Canary. Typically, the masterful fighter Black Canary is known for her relationship with Oliver Queen, although when it came to Frank Miller's Dark Knight and All-Star Batman and Robin, he shocked fans with a surprising hookup. The random hookup was brief and fleeting, but regardless was filled with an intense comic book hookup passion. Black Canary started to fall for Batman simply for his ability to fight off criminals using just his fists, which makes sense considering how notable of a fighter the Black Canary is. Although we're guessing this relationship didn't last long because the first thing Batman said when kissing her, "I haven't kissed a smoker in weeks, not since Selena." Way to kill the vibe, dude. Bringing up your ex on the first kiss? Man.
In at number 3, Hulkling. Young Avengers Hulkling Teddy Altman and Wiccan Billy Kaplan are one of the best teen couples in comics currently, or young adult rather. Hulkling is a Kree-Skrull hybrid and Wiccan is a mutant and a mage. The latter is the reincarnated son of Scarlet Witch and the former is the son of the original Captain Marvel, Mar-Vell. Now Teddy's heritage is a bit clearer. The source of Billy's powers though are a bit unclear despite his powers being triggered when Scarlet Witch healed him. Now it is presumed he is a mutant. Despite this, the relationship between the two is pretty darn wonderful. Teddy and Billy have have managed to make it through thick and thin and have become a fan favorite ship to a larger audience than just LGBTQ readers. They're also engaged, so that's exciting, and have a really sweet apartment in downtown Manhattan. Like, how dope is that? Moving on to number 2, Star-Lord. While Colossus might be endgame for Kitty Pryde, Shadowcat had a pretty intense relationship with Peter Quill, aka Star-Lord, not too long ago. One of the more recent memorable pairings, the two met after Kitty found herself in space when the young time-displaced version of Jean Grey had been put on trial by the Shi'ar Empire. It started as a long-distance relationship, but eventually she joined the Guardians of the Galaxy and he proposed to her. Many people adored them for how real and relatable the romance felt, but unfortunately it did not last, with Kitty calling off the engagement and the relationship itself after the events of Civil War II. And last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Squirrel Girl. In New Avengers Volume 2 Issue 7, Squirrel Girl Doreen Green becomes the nanny for Jessica Jones and Luke Cage's daughter, but in doing so, she comes face to face with another member of the team, a past lover of hers, Wolverine. That's where we learn that the two had a previous romantic rendezvous. They awkwardly compliment each other on how good they both look, and then there's a bit of a sparring match between them where Wolverine gets his butt handed to him. No claws involved in the sparring, might I add though. Unfortunately, or maybe fortunately for those of you less curious, that is all we learned about their romantic past together. I mean, can you blame us for being curious?
In at number 10, Shazam and Stargirl. A lot of the superheroes close to Shazam don't know that he's actually a teenager trapped in an adult's body. While working with the JSA, he and the teen Stargirl started getting, a little bit closer, and while the two were stuck in a different dimension, their powers were stripped away, so the adult Shazam was in his teen form of Billy Batson. Other than in this scenario, these two superheroes hooking up was just plain weird, which is also why we would have never seen this coming regardless of how close they were before this. They worked collaboratively to escape this dimension and even sealed it with a kiss. Although once returning to the JSA, they were kinda really weirded out by seeing an adult Shazam hitting on the teen Stargirl, so definitely a short-lived hookup. In at number 9, Black Widow and Winter Soldier. After many had thought that Bucky Barnes was dead for sure, he made a miraculous comeback as the Winter Soldier in 2005. Bucky had spent his time away working with the Soviet Union as their top assassin, and during that time he had begun a relationship with Natasha Romanoff. Although because they were both part of a secret Soviet organizations, their brains were constantly being messed with, which led to the Winter Widow couple forgetting that they had even been together. When Bucky had his brief stint as Captain America, he and Natasha worked hand in hand on a lot of missions, but the Black Widow was brainwashed yet again to be an assassin. Bucky, on the other hand, was able to break out of this mind control and remember their relationship, but Natasha remembered everything except their hookups. Oof. Oh, sorry, I don't remember. In at number 8, Hawkeye and Wasp. In another surprising hookup that we never saw coming, we have the odd pairing of Hawkeye and the Wasp. Written by the sort of hated Chuck Austin, when he was working on the Avengers comic books, he drove fans insane with the way that he took the characters out of context. He would often write in storylines for characters that just didn't fit them. Fans couldn't believe how out of left field this relationship was between the two friends who literally had no build up to this really random hookup. Even Captain America and Hank were questioning why the pair were embracing each other at the start of Avengers issue 83 volume 3. Thankfully this didn't last long because Chuck was, well, removed from his job, as was the hookup. In at number 7, Cyclops and Emma Frost. This hookup isn't so much something that we didn't see coming, but more so something that fans really wanted to ignore ever happened. Emma's character may have been altered a bit, but deep down she's still this manipulative and arrogant lady. She only started hooking up with Cyclops because she knew it would make Jean Grey angry, and you wouldn't like her when she's angry. The White Queen did everything in her power to play games with Scott, eventually driving his character into a very bad place before she eventually embraced her role as a villain, where she should always remain. In at number 6, Nightwing and Catwoman. Now I get that this is a superhero hookup video, but Catwoman has done heroic things before, so let's just give her the benefit of the doubt. Back in 1996 for Nightwing issue number 52, Catwoman and Nightwing had a very unusual and unexpected encounter. The hookup between them didn't exactly come from a place of hidden affection either. Catwoman wanted to make Batman jealous, and when Grayson ran into her at a warehouse, she took full advantage of this opportunity. Nightwing is trying to switch the focus to the danger at hand, but Catwoman is only focused on this bizarre jealousy scheme. Regardless of the intentions on both ends, they both engaged in this secret love affair and then agreed not to let Bruce know. like you wouldn't find out eventually. In at number 5, Daredevil and Black Cat. During the comic book Amazing Spider-Man number 677, Black Cat had been arrested, so Spider-Man had called on Daredevil for an epic team-up to help free her, although Black Cat didn't really need either of their help. She was already able to break out of prison on her own and even set up a trap for the two. I mean, what a nice thing to do for somebody that wanted to free you from jail. Oh, and by the way, the trap? She rigged 2 buildings to crash down on top of them, leaving both superheroes quite helpless. And at the end, they were able to sort out their differences, but for whatever reason, Daredevil felt this attraction for Black Cat. The two eventually hooked up, but other than that single surprising time, they didn't develop the relationship into anything more. I mean, thank God. She's evil lady.
And at number 4, Iron Man. Yes, Iron Man and Emma Frost. Of course Tony Stark has hooked up with at least one mutant, and of course it was Emma Frost. The two of them are undoubtedly tens, and I think we'd be insulted if they hadn't have hooked up in the past. While unfortunately we never got to see that hookup happen on panel, it is referred to in Civil War issue 3 while Tony visits Emma in Westchester. Tony asks her, I quote, "Does Cyclops know about that little arrangement we used to have when neither of us were dating?" To which Emma responds, "Cyclops knows everything, Tony. He can't keep secrets from my telepathic mind, so it's only fair that I don't keep anything from him." Friends with benefits, people. Moving on.
And at 3, Carol Danvers and Marcus Immortus. Avengers issue 200. One of the most infamous moments in Marvel canon. In this issue, we see Carol Danvers, who was Ms. Marvel at the time, get her mind hijacked by Marcus Immortus and turns her into his wife, then assaults her in ways that I can't really talk about on YouTube, and then gives her a baby. The baby she ends up giving birth to is Marcus as a baby to give him a form on Earth. That baby then grows rapidly into Marcus that then tries to marry her again. This comic was extremely poorly received, not only by the community, but also by the X-Men and Carol herself as she returned. When she did, she criticized the Avengers, saying that Beast was even willing to play teddy bear, and she's right. They let her go. No question. And then when she's back, they want her to rejoin the team. It's literally one of the worst moments in Avengers history, and it happened when they were supposed to be celebrating, making it to 200 issues. It's a shame, and it needs to be forgotten. We need to retcon that more, or like retcon it like in the real world.
Number 2, Human Torch and Mr. Fantastic. That is right, speaking of alternate realities, there is an alternate reality over at Marvel where the Human Torch is the older Storm sibling who ends up married to Reed Richards. This alternate team of the FF appear in issue 563 of the Fantastic Four series, legacy numbering of course. Here we meet Jack Storm, who is Reed Richards' partner in crime fighting and his partner in romance. Jack is the older sibling and Sue is the younger, though she is still a member of the team as the Invisible Woman. Unfortunately, their alternate world was in pretty bleak shape when we saw them in that issue. The whole team died, but we can't assume there was a time in this reality where Jack and his husband Reed were actually quite happy together, before everything pretty much ended. This couple existed in the reality of Earth 93563.
Last but not least, in our number 1 spot, Doctor Strange and Elektra. Set to be released March 4th, 2020, the cover for the Savage Avengers issue number 11 has raised a lot of eyebrows. The comic book is meant to reveal the horrific secret behind Kulanga's power, but the real question most fans will have is this hookup between Elektra and Doctor Strange. It's just bizarre. We don't know all the details as of yet, but what we do know is that Clea and Matt Murdock are probably equally out of the loop on this one. In the previous issue, Strange, Doom, and Conan the Barbarian will attempt to kill Kulangath, but for the next issue to have this as the cover, something had to have gone down. I guess we'll have to wait and see though, if this is going to be either short-lived or long-term. Who's to say? Although I want to hear what you have to say about it. Leave me a comment down below if you think their relationship is going to go on. Is Matt Murdock going to come back and be like, bro, you stole my girlfriend, what's up?
In at number 10, HELLCAT. HELLCAT, aka Patsy Walker, hooked up with the son of Satan once upon a time. Damien Hellstrom and Patsy hit it off as soon as he joined the Defenders, and the two fell in love. Damon was into Patsy because she made him feel loved just by being herself, and helped him become more of, I quote, a son of man than a son of Satan. Whoa. And what did Patsy get out of this? Well, she thought he was super hot. Just, oh damn, look at that Satan. symbol on his chest. That's what Patsy was probably thinking. This got even weirder when Satan decided he would try to convince the hero that she was his daughter in Defenders issue 111 from 1982. Incestual stuff. Now, despite that strange blip, Patsy and Damon actually got married in Defenders issue 125, which caused Damon to lose his dark soul and become human, which incidentally also killed him. This led to Patsy attempting to save him in Hellstrom, Son of Satan, issue 12, retrieving his dark soul and making Damon a demon again. And it gets weird for them yet again, because after seeing Damon's true form, Patsy couldn't deal and she killed herself. She'd return eventually, as all comic book characters do, except for Uncle Ben. And in Marvel Divas issue 1-4, Damon reappears to Patsy after she's published a tell-all book about her life, and offers to heal her friend Firestar's cancer in exchange for Patsy's soul. And really, it's all just a narcissistic ruse to Damon, who is just pissed off that he was barely mentioned in Patsy's book. So, yeah. Narcissism.
Number 9, Batman and Batgirl. While the relationship is both highly out of character for the two, Batman being Batgirl's mentor and everything, apparently he just can't stop himself around her. This was obvious in the infamous scene from the Killing Joke animated version, where the writers decided they needed to pad out the runtime for the movie with Barbara taking out her frustrations with her mentor by climbing on top of him and getting way too close on a rooftop. It also happened more after that, being revealed in Batman Beyond 2.0 that while dating Dick Grayson, Bruce slept with Barbara again, and this time actually got her pregnant. This is really not in character for Bruce. Sure, he's brooding and a darker character, but he has a moral code and a conscience. However, the way that hookup was presented depicts him as a heartless sociopath. He doesn't even acknowledge the baby he ends up sticking Barbara with. Plus, this is something that Dick and Bruce never really recover from. It's just a total dick move. No pun intended.
And at number 8, Deadpool and 2 people actually for this one, Shikla and Satana. So we have our first double offender here on our list. Yes, there are more. Deadpool hasn't hooked up with just one demon, but 2. Let's start off with another child of Satan's, the creatively named Satana, who Deadpool saved from the results of a high-stakes poker game with 5 geeky dudes. It turns out these geeky dudes are actually some bigwigs in the demonic world. Specifically, they are Dormammu, Lucifer, Mephisto, and 2 other guys, who wanted to marry the succubus daughter of Satan in order to become the heir to hell. Now, Satana lost her soul in said poker game, having to be married to the demon who won, until Deadpool stepped in and married her first. In exchange, she endowed him with powers that let him defeat these demons, causing them to retreat. Satana immediately broke it off with the Merc with a Mouth though, keeping half of his soul as part of their divorce. She wasn't the only demon that he's married though. Deadpool had an on and off again relationship with the demon Shikla, who he had been paid to go and fetch after her father had put her in stasis as a means of keeping her safe from Dracula. They got married, but after a bunch of issues arose in their relationship, Shikla would do the unthinkable and ditch DP for the last man that her dad wanted her shacking up with, Dracula himself. It's fine, Deadpool's really in love with Mistress Death, so it's all good. And at number 7, Zatanna and Constantine. So, Constantine classifies as part demon. He once got a blood transfusion from the demon lord Nergal. Nergal is a demon, which is enough to classify him as a demon half in this pairing. Now, when Zatanna first hit the scene, many of her adventures consisted of trying to find her birth father. This quest led her to the Justice League of America, further colliding her with other heroes, including Constantine. Now, after she found Daddy Dearest, her and John would have an on and off again affair while he was dating one of his other love interests, Emma. This affair would always be complicated by the fact that Constantine was somewhat responsible for her father's death, having been the one who organized a seance in which her dad sacrificed himself to protect her. The romance would continue to be explored after the New 52 relaunch in the Justice League Dark, with the 2 of them being exes, but on good and civil terms. Now we'll be talking about some other demonic love interests of Constantine later on in our list, where he is actually the more human half. But for now, on to our next number, and at 6, my personal favorite, Mephisto and Rogue. Oh, this pairing kills me. It is so absurd and so weird, and of course it's Rogue. Remember when she shacked up with Magneto for a hot second in the 616 and then for a long minute in the Age of Apocalypse timeline? Yeah, girl's got some interesting taste in love interests, and also a thing for dudes with the letter M as their first initial, but not Gambit. He doesn't count. Once upon a time, there was a fun little miniseries called Mephisto vs. the Marvel Universe, and in it, he was all about collecting those hot female superhero souls for his lonesome self. He hit up the Invisible Woman first, then Jean Grey, and then by the 3rd issue, he had his sights set on Rogue. Rogue's thoughts during this brief entanglement consists of her debating about whether or not she's feeling this demonic makeout. She goes through an emotional roller coaster, stating that her mind is blown by the fact that she's able to touch someone and kiss someone, but then she is triggered by the fact that it is with, I quote, a creature like Mephisto. She then gets freaked out by the fact that he is old, or as she puts it, so incredibly old. Now after they kiss, Rogue is almost mean about it, saying, I quote, "You're like me. No one ever wants to touch you, to know you. Only with you, it's like 100,000 times worse." She's basically like, oh man, my life sucks, but yours is so much worse, dude. Like, you're way more lonely than I am. And he legit responds with, "Bah, spare me your pity," as if he's like not hurt by it. She's so mean. Rogue then Nancy Drews his MO of taking souls as a substitute for real contact, and then she makes it about her, so he macks her some more to get her to shut up. Problematic storylines, gotta love them, but it's a demon. Anyway, long story short, Rogue absorbs his soul collecting abilities, and then he tries to use her in the 4th issue to steal Thor's soul, and then it's revealed that this was all just a convoluted scheme to screw around with Hela. Yeah. And also apparently to get some.
Number 10, STARFOX. These two were so weird in the comics, and definitely the writing of how this all kind of came about is something I feel like most of us would just like to forget, which is why they are ranked so low. The two had a fling one night when they were both Avengers. Jen even described the as being amazing, but later she reminisces about her night with STARFOX while defending him in a assault case. She begins to worry through hearing a woman's testimony that he has used his powers and influence on her to make her fall for him. It turned out that he hadn't done that, but something just as bad. He had manipulated her into falling for someone else. He was of course just doing it because he wanted to see Jen happy, but manipulating someone into having feelings for another person, which later results in them getting married, is never really a good look, especially on someone who is supposed to be a hero like Eros. What were you thinking, STARFOX? What were you thinking? Number 9, Man-Wolf. She-Hulk and Man-Wolf had a brief and rocky romance, which later became a full-blown love story to them, who were both under the influence of Eros. STARFOX made the two of them fall in love, and they both became obsessed with one another. She-Hulk even went so far as to try and stay in her human form when she was around John, who preferred her that way. The two eloped, but when Jen found out the truth behind why they really loved one another, she immediately wanted a divorce, finally understanding why her and John also had so many unresolvable disagreements, yet somehow decided to stay together. John wanted to give it another go, saying that he still loved Jen, but she refused to give in, claiming that really they had never loved one another, leaving Man-Wolf, aka John Jonah Jameson III, with no options but to sign the divorce papers. I get it though, She-Hulk's pretty awesome, I'd want to hold on to that too. Number 8, Richard Rory. While Richard may not be a hero in the super sense, he has worked heroically to try and protect the monstrous hero Man-Thing after an encounter with him left Rory forever changed. Richard was originally a DJ for a radio station in Florida who always seemed to find himself down on his luck. Again, not a great pick when it comes to partners for Jen, but definitely one that briefly happened. These two ran into each other in the streets of Las Vegas, and Rory offered Jennifer Walters a ride after he suspected that she had had a run-in with the terrifying She-Hulk. She originally turned him down until she saw his sweet ride, which was limo. Rory had just won a ton of money at the casino and was currently quite well off. Jen decided to go with Richard. Richard is a pessimist who feels he always has bad luck, and as such this makes him pretty mopey, and we usually see anything that happens to him in a negative mindset as a result. Although Richard may have not been great for Jen, Jen was pretty good for him, offering that Richard's main problem was actually that he just had an unhealthy self-image. The two parted ways after an adventure involving the Man-Thing, though they would run into each other a couple more times in the comics. They parted with a kiss. Number 7, Clay Quartermain. Clay was an agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. and led the Hulkbusters at one point. He recruited She-Hulk for S.H.I.E.L.D. when she was called in after being a registered superhuman under the Superhuman Registration Act. Shortly after joining up, Clay called She-Hulk Mrs. Jameson, using her former married name. She corrected him, saying that she had actually reverted back to Walters after her divorce. Hearing she was divorced, Clay became intrigued, and it's implied that he put a move on her. She-Hulk did end up sleeping with him, though she seems to express some remorse after, thinking to herself that Jennifer Walters would not have done that, but as She-Hulk, she does what she wants, when she wants, and with whom she wants. However, it also seemed that her decision to sleep with Quartermain left her questioning her own sense of self, and caused her to look in the mirror and face an emptiness that seemed to be eating away inside her. And Hawkeye. In the What If series Volume 2, Issue 114, we get to examine a world where heroes and villains stayed on Battleworld during the events of the original Secret Wars, laid down their arms, and ended up basically retiring and settling down. One of the oddest couples to come out of this What If story was She-Hulk and Hawkeye, who had a son named CJ, who was green with his mom's strength, but the skill of his dad when it came to being a crack shot. How these two came together exactly we'll never know, but hey, at least they weren't quite as strange as the pairing of Captain America and Rogue, so there's that. Number 5. Iron Man. Oddly enough, someone else who also has a romantic history with She-Hulk tried to stop this from happening, Clay Quartermain. Tony appears and offers to debrief She-Hulk, revealing a candlelit dinner setting in a room on the helicarrier, despite the fact that Quartermain insists that he should be the one doing any debriefing. Tony Stark and She-Hulk end up in bed together after the debriefing, if there was one at all, and actually begin to have a fairly interesting conversation. She-Hulk inquires as to how Tony manages to sleep around, expanding that when she does it she's labeled as a skank, but when he does it he is glorified as a player. Tony is about to answer and provide Jennifer with his insight when the helicarrier is attacked, detracting what could have been undoubtedly a very interesting conversation between the two supers. Number 4. Hercules. She-Hulk has had a thing for Hercules for a while in the comics. She's fantasized about him on more than one occasion and fought alongside him. In one instance, he made an appearance in Volume 2, Issue 30 of She-Hulk, where the two got up to more than just a fantasy, and more than just fighting. She-Hulk teamed up to help Hercules take down a Celtic god, which ended up with the two of them alone together in an ambulance. They got to talking apparently, and one thing led to another. Before Jen knew it, she was resting in the arms of a god after finally getting to sleep with him. She knew it wasn't going to end up anywhere, but she was pretty fine with that. One thing I've always loved about She-Hulk is how much she just owns her own sexuality. So cool to see that in comics in general. Number 3. Thor. More recently in the comics, She-Hulk and Thor have been a thing, which has excited many fans. Both heroes are known for their strength, making this superhero duo quite the power couple. Originally, Jen was worried about having a crush on Thor. She feared that he only liked her for her She-Hulk form, but in Avengers Volume 8, she and Thor have a heart-to-heart. Just as Jen is ready to walk out on Thor, he confesses his feelings, admitting he is enamored by the She-Hulk, but who he really wants to know is the She inside, who he feels he has distance from. He wants to know Jen's desires and thoughts and fall in love with them. The two seal the deal with a kiss. Aww. I also love how that all starts with Thor being like, I'm terrible with words. And then he's like, JK, I just nailed it. Number 10. Cable and X-23. This relationship was somewhat implied in the second volume of Fallen Angels from 2019. Here, young Cable and X-23, aka Wolverine, aka Laura Kinney, are brought together to join Quanon's Psylocke on a mission to uncover the location of her daughter, and what happened to her. During the series, there were lots of great flirting and bantery moments between young Cable or Kid Cable and X-23. We'd also learn in the Cable series from the same period that young Cable was popular on the island, dating actually a bunch of young and eligible mutant ladies. While X-23 and Cable's relationship never really seemed to grow into anything permanent, it was still a fun time and kind of a random ship that seemed to work surprisingly well. Of course, this was before Laura got with Sync during their time together in the vault, but that of course might be a story for another list, if you're unfamiliar with that one. Also, if you are, goodness, I need to put that on a list because it's such a lovely relationship. Number 9. Batman and Batgirl. Batman and Batgirl. Oh boy. We've talked about this one before on the channel, but it's such an unlikely pairing that it's pretty easy to miss if you're not aware of it. And if you're new, I mean, welcome to this awkwardness because you've probably never heard me tell you about it before. These two ended up together in the animated universe, where in Batman Beyond it was suggested that the two had a relationship. We'd later learn through the Batman Beyond comics set in that same world that not only did this happen, but that Barbara and Bruce, who already are typically more portrayed as having a mentor and teacher relationship, hooked up behind Dick Grayson's back while he was away. And that their time together actually resulted in Barbara becoming pregnant with Bruce's child. The baby never made it to full term, and the loss of the potential child did end the relationship between Batgirl and Batman. Although we'd still revisit that in another animated movie, but yeah. Number 8. Speed and Prodigy. This one might just be selfishly included for me, because it's a relationship that I personally always forget about. So I'm gonna include it here, in case you, like me, also somehow forgot about this one. I think the reason this one gets overlooked in my mind is just because of the big energy that we get from Hulkling and Wiccan's relationship, which kinda tends to overshadow Wiccan's brother Tommy, aka Speed, and what he has going on. I love Prodigy though, and every time I read him, it helps to jog my memory. Every time I'm reading about Prodigy, I'm like, oh yeah, Prodigy's with Speed. Also, these two were both kind of on the back burner for a while, but guess what? If you're a shipper of Speed and Prodigy together, they're kinda back together in the forefront, and of course better than ever. At least somewhat in the forefront. I mean, I don't think they're gonna be beating Hulkling and Wiccan in terms of being in the forefront anytime soon, but you know, those two together are like, so cosmic. Number 7. Superman and Luma Linei. Superman and Luma Linei were brought together by Supergirl, who wanted to help her cousin, Kal-El, find the perfect mate. Trying her hand at playing matchmaker, Supergirl found for him the superpowered blonde Luma Linei. Luma actually looked pretty much exactly like Supergirl, which sounds awkward, but that was kind of the whole point of this match. In Action Comics Volume 1, issue 289, Supergirl tries setting up Superman 3 times, and the third time only seems to stick because Superman actually shares with Supergirl that if he had to marry anyone, he wanted to be someone just like her. Well, that's not weird at all. Your cousins, that's not weird at all. So Supergirl heads to the planet STARGIRL, locating a match that is remarkably similar to a grown-up version of her. Fortunately, Luma can't come back to Earth, oh no, because our yellow sun is harmful to her, despite giving Superman his powers. So the two are only together for this one issue, and then they're basically forced apart forever. Well, Superman actually offers to stay with Luma on her home world instead, but she just refuses the offer in tears, because comics. Superman's gotta be Superman, so he's like, I can't actually marry you, so I need you to refuse me, please. The writers were like, that's how we'll get him out of this one. Great. Number 6. Iron Man and Emma Frost. One that I'm still waiting to happen in the comics is the coupling of Tony Stark and Emma Frost. Okay, so admittedly, that is a thing that kind of already happened. Tony and Emma used to be friends with benefits for a time, and it was referred to back by the two of them in issue 3 of the 2006 Civil War series. But what I'm talking about here is actually a foreshadowed wedding that was mentioned in History of the Marvel Universe issue number 6. This was something that was intended to be coming up that hadn't happened yet. I'm not necessarily holding my breath for this one, as plans in the mutant lineup have kind of changed of late, but I'm still keeping my eye out for these two to come together, and maybe you should too, because you know, that future might not be so far away. That way you can also join me on my aha moment when and if it does come to pass. And then when it happens, you too can be in on it, and you can be like, I knew it! We talked about it on this list.
In at number 4, Mystique and Azazel. X-Men member Nightcrawler is the product of a mutant and a demon rubbing nasties. Mystique, his biological mother, who is blue and has shape-shifting abilities, hooks up with Azazel after developing a crush on the Niafem. In Uncanny X-Men issue 428, Mystique, who wants to get married to the demon, learns the hard way that sometimes dudes just want a one-night stand with a blue mutant inside of a church. In the aftermath, Azazel is all like, girl, never confuse physical passion for a condition of the heart. Since the dawn of mankind, the two have rarely gone hand in hand. She's like, yeah, whoa. But also is still like really upset about it because she does like kind of love him. He's just like the ultimate demon boy. He also impregnates her with Nightcrawler, who she is forced to abandon in order to save from an angry mob. But Azazel's like, yo, I'ma save you and then give you to my sister and then everything is dope. He did that too. He's hip, he is with the kids. And at number 3, Etrigan and Lady Xanadu and Lady Blaze. Etrigan loves the ladies. He is also another double whammy on our list. So for starters, Etrigan is Jason Blood, a mortal man bound to the demon Etrigan, meaning they share their love interests, which sometimes gets complicated. In Batman the Dark Knight issues 4 and 5 back in 2011, Etrigan makes an appearance when hunting down a demon running rampant in Gotham. Turns out this demon is a servant of Lady Blaze's, who then strikes up a deal with Etrigan to fully restore his power in exchange for him being her consort. Jason Blood is like, nah man, I'm good. Like, this chick's a demon, I think I'm going to pass. But Etrigan is like, yes please, and overpowers Jason. Etrigan eventually realizes that Blaze is lying in order to take advantage of him. Chip drop. It's not gonna get some, demon boy.
Number 2, Wyatt Wingfoot. She-Hulk met Wyatt during her time on the Fantastic Four roster when she was standing in for Ben Grimm. The team had a run-in with Wyatt and his tribe. But Wyatt Wingfoot is not superpowered. He has acted as an ally to both the Fantastic Four and She-Hulk herself on her own adventures. He often also acts as a hero when it comes to protecting his tribe, the Kiwazi. Sorry if I say that wrong. Jennifer and Wyatt quickly begin a romance that would span over decades in the comics. She met his parents, he attended law school, and even at one point proposed to her. Unfortunately, later his own duties as chief of the Kiwazi tribe and ensuring the tribe's safety would oftentimes keep him away from her. Still, the two's on and off again relationship has been revisited as late as the 2000s and as early as the 1980s. That's a long relationship. Number 1, Luke Cage. So I know Luke Cage is destined to be with Jessica Jones, and I love the two of them together, but She-Hulk and Luke Cage had some of the cutest chemistry that I've ever seen in comics. They both worked together in Heroes for Hire, and it was during She-Hulk's time there that Luke Cage won a date with her by betting that he could get to the control room of a building before she could. He won running through the walls to get there, and She-Hulk agreed to go on a date with Luke. He and Jen just have some great dialogue during their time together in the 90s. She-Hulk is quite sassy, and they both seem to challenge each other in the best of ways, causing one another to reflect on their world views. They push each other to be better too, and are both tough enough to survive getting romantic with the other. Short-lived romance. Bring it back. Number 5, Batman and Black Canary. A lot of people think of Black Canary as only really having eyes for Green Arrow. Often in the comics, these two superheroes have been painted as soulmates for one another. But hey, you know, that wasn't always the case. There was a time in the comics when Black Canary actually had second thoughts as to whether or not her and Ollie were really meant to be. When she was having doubts, Batman was there for her, and the two at one point in main continuity shared a passionate kiss. Well, back when Earth 1 was considered the main continuity anyways, before it was retconned to be considered an alternate Earth. In regards to the old once main continuity of Earth 1 though, that's about as far as it ever got between these two heroes. However, in Frank Miller's All-Star Batman and Robin, the two are actually lovers, at least for a time, with Batman also kind of being the more reluctant participant when it comes to the somewhat unlikely couple. But Black Canary is super into it, and Batman's like, I mean, I'm here. I would do this. Number 4, Luke Cage and She-Hulk. Luke Cage is a guy who you usually think of as being with Jessica Jones. Why? Well, because the two are married and they also have a daughter together. Also, they're super cute together. The two of them are an amazing power couple. But before they tied the knot and ended up committing to one another, did you know that Luke Cage actually went on a date with She-Hulk? Yep. After winning a bet, he got Jennifer Walters to commit to going out to dinner with him. Honestly, these two together are also a great pair when you think about it. Both are strong, both are witty, and both are committed to doing whatever it takes to save civilians in peril. Unfortunately, their relationship really only consisted of that one date as far as I know, which is also why you might have missed this brief pairing. If you want to check out this date though, which coincidentally gets interrupted by some baddies but then even continues after that, check out Heroes for Hire issue 17. And I believe that's Heroes for Hire volume number 1 from the 90s. Number 3, Supergirl and Jimmy Olsen. This happened in Superman's pal Jimmy Olsen. What a wonderful, weird series. What happened? Well, Supergirl, who has at times been shipped with Soup's pal, ties the knot with Jimmy Olsen himself. Jimmy gets all the ladies in the comics, but really he kinda does. Must be that ginger charm. Jimmy Olsen ends up with Supergirl in this case because she gets amnesia. Jimmy, not knowing that Linda Danvers, the Supergirl's secret identity, accidentally exposes her to red kryptonite when she attends a show where he's basically showing off all his trophies and his souvenirs from his exploits with Superman. The two are wed, and it's only after their wedding, when they are married, that the effects of the red kryptonite wear off, with Linda getting her memories and her superpowers back. Now, Supergirl has a dilemma because, you know, she wants Jimmy to also love that other side of her. Because yeah, she gets her memories back and she's like, yeah, I'm married to Jimmy Olsen, I love it. So she wants Jimmy to fall in love with her true Kryptonian side. So what is a girl to do? Well, obviously try to get him to cheat on his wife, who is of course still her, with her superhero persona of Supergirl, right? Isn't that what we do? It was a different time, folks. Jimmy ends up being conflicted when he believes both women are interested in him, with Supergirl actually propositioning him for marriage, even though he's already married to Linda. In the end though, everything is resolved and Jimmy realizes he's married to Supergirl and Linda, who are one and the same. However, this issue also ends with the fact that this is all an imaginary tale. Haha, joke's on you, reader. So the wedding that thousands of readers, as described in the intro, had apparently been waiting for was actually all a sham. Aw, DC, you got us. But hey, in an alternate reality where this happened, the two are possibly still married, so fun facts.
In at number 2, Captain America and Scarlet Witch. Yep, you heard that right. This hookup was certainly a bizarre moment considering the fact that these two for a long time were considered by fans as more of a mentor-mentee type relationship. Because of this, it came as a huge surprise that a romance was starting between them. Although Wanda had actually been crushing on Cap for a long time. In fact, ever since the beginning of her time with the Avengers, the two shared many close calls that built up to this passionate yet short-lived hookup. However, it only ended between them because Captain America didn't think it was a great idea. The feeling was not mutual. Wanda ended up using her reality warping powers to cause a reaction of events that culminated with the Avengers Disassembled storyline, which yet again reinforces the idea that you should never date your coworkers.
Number 1, Harley Quinn and Harley Quinn. Now, I think at this point we can almost certainly count Harley as a superhero. I mean, at least an anti-hero, at the very least. While she may have won Villain of the Year only a few years ago in 2019, she still has played an active role when it comes to the hero side of things in the comics, even teaming up with Batman in Joker War and joining the Bat family in a more recurring role as Bat's sidekick this year in 2021 in the Batman series. So for that reason, I'm gonna count her for this list. Also, I love Harley for the reason that she is constantly changing and evolving so much. It's hard to pin her down as either hero or villain permanently. It's great. I like when people are like, what are they? They're kind of complicated. That's what they are. In her own series, Harley's Little Black Book, here Harley teams up with herself, her bombshell self that is. Harley's Little Black Book, in case you didn't know, is actually a team-up book for Harley Quinn. Also, if you haven't read it, go check it out. It's pretty wild and pretty fun. Because Harley ends up teaming with herself in issue number 4 of this series, she can't resist and of course gives herself a big kiss. While main continuity Harley is all about it and even proclaims, hey, she's a pretty good kisser, bombshell Harley does not seem to feel any sparks between them, thinking that the main continuity Harley is actually a trick created by her enemies. Gotta love the self-love.
And finally, in at number 1, saved the biggest for last, Hulk and Umar. The Hulk has had his fair share of romances, but none is as wacky as his hookup with Umar, the demon sister of the mystical entity Dormammu. She's his little sis. It's kinda hard to imagine him having any family whatsoever, but this is a thing. She also lives in a tower where she kinda kidnaps the Hulk and then hooks up with him as seen in Defenders issue 3. And oh boy, at first he wasn't feeling it at all, so there's some consent issues there, but then wabam. After 6 whole minutes of them doing the dirty, he can't take it. He is so overwhelmed with ecstasy that he can't keep up with her. He even reverts back to Bruce Banner afterwards. Now, keep in mind, almost nothing is capable of reverting Hulk back to Banner. Once upon a time, the only thing that worked was puppies. So apparently Bruce Banner will not be the Hulk if you give him puppies or mind-blowing. Take what you will from that. Umar would make a cameo later on in The Incredible Hulk issue 633 when he was Worldbreaker Hulk. She showed up in a portal that was shaped like a mouth and chilled him out by having sex with him, of course. This time with their banging forming a giant mushroom cloud in the process. Yeah.